Story number 1. Road trip nightmare, when my GPS became a portal to the paranormal. I was driving down a familiar stretch of highway in 2001 when my mundane road trip turned into a nightmare that would haunt me forever. The GPS, my trusted companion, suddenly glitched and began whispering coordinates in a language I shouldn't have understood, but did, like a memory surfacing from another life. My name's Jason, and back then, I was a 25-year-old freelance photographer. With me were my friends, Sarah, a nurse who could calm any storm, Derek, the techie, and Lisa, an aspiring journalist with a curiosity that often got the better of her. The coordinates led us off the main road and deep into the heartland of the United States, to an abandoned village that shouldn't have existed. Each building stood desolate, a silent testament to a forgotten era. As we walked through the village, the GPS continued to whisper, its screen flickering with static as if it was possessed. Each structure we explored held clues, ethereal echoes of the past that whispered secrets into my ear. The village was once a clandestine commune, a hotbed for devil worship and unspeakable rituals. Derek, a skeptic of the paranormal, was the first to stumble upon a cryptic symbol etched into the foundation of what appeared to be a chapel, which sent a shiver down my spine. As nightfall approached, unexplained phenomena began to intensify. Cameras malfunctioned, recording devices picked up EVPs of tormented whispers, and Sarah swore she saw shadows darting between the buildings. Lisa, notebook in hand, was frenetically jotting down every anomaly, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and excitement. The puzzle pieces slowly formed a terrifying picture. Each building represented a sin, and each sin was linked to a death, a series of exorcism rituals gone horrifically wrong. I felt an overwhelming urge to solve the cursed puzzle, to silence the whispers that felt as if they were eroding my sanity. We found the remnants of a burned-out circle where it seemed the final ritual had taken place. In the center lay a charred amulet, its edges still sharp enough to draw blood, which it did when I picked it up. The whispers crescendoed into a cacophony that only I could hear, urging me to complete the puzzle. In a daze, I arranged the artifacts we'd collected from each building into a pattern that mirrored the constellation above us. As the last piece fell into place, a spectral figure materialized, its form flickering like old film. It was the high priest of the commune, his voice a guttural chant that resonated with the whispers from the GPS. Lisa's voice cut through the trance. "Jason, what are you doing?" But it was too late. A portal seemed to open, and the darkness from it threatened to engulf us all. I remember the terror in Derek's eyes and Sarah's screams as the ghostly figure reached towards me. And then, silence. I woke up in the car, alone. The GPS was normal, its screen displaying the route home. No sign of Sarah, Derek, or Lisa. I tried to tell their families, the police, anyone who would listen about the haunted village, but when I led them back, there was nothing but undisturbed land. The investigation that followed turned up no leads. My friends were never found, and I was left with a burden of whispers that only I could hear, a reminder of that night. The community called it a creepypasta, a horror story for the digital age, but I know the truth. To this day, I avoid GPS devices, fearful that one day, they'll whisper again, and I'll be drawn back into that cursed puzzle, searching for my friends who vanished into the whispering coordinates. Story number 2. Turn left at your own risk, the GPS haunting. I was driving under the safe glow of streetlights when my reality took a sharp turn into the abyss. It was 2002, and I, Alex, along with my childhood friend Zoe, a rookie cop, Caleb, an amateur historian, and Mia, a pragmatic engineer, decided to embark on a road trip to break the monotony of our lives. But as soon as we hit the outskirts of our suburban neighborhood, our journey took an unexpected and chilling detour. The GPS, which we had nicknamed Voyager, started malfunctioning, but not in a way that any of us had seen before. At every left turn, it led us to locations marked by tragedy, sites of infamous left-turn accidents that had claimed lives under mysterious circumstances. Caleb, the skeptic, laughed it off initially, But even he couldn't deny the chill that ran down our spines when Zoe confirmed the accuracies of the accidents from police records. "You must follow," Voyager whispered in a static-laden voice, "or the past will repeat." The directive was clear, and ignoring it felt like tempting fate. As we drove from one grisly sight to another, the air grew thick with the stench of death, and the atmosphere inside the car became heavy with dread. Mia tried to dismantle the GPS, but it wouldn't power off. It was as if something otherworldly had taken control of it, and of us. As night deepened, we noticed that we weren't alone. A phantom vehicle appeared in the rearview mirror every time we approached a left turn. Its headlights would flicker, and a shadowy figure could be seen behind the wheel, reenacting the turn that had led to its doom. Zoe was resolute in preventing any more tragedies, even if it meant following the GPS's spectral instructions. It wasn't long before we understood that each location was a piece of a grim puzzle. Caleb's knowledge of local lore came to light. These accidents weren't just random, they were linked to an urban legend about a cursed intersection where a crossroad demon supposedly made deals that ended in fatal left turns. The final destination was the heart of the mystery, the cursed intersection itself. As we approached, the GPS screen flickered violently, and the whispering became a scream. "Turn left," it ordered, but Mia, with her hands on the wheel, hesitated. The phantom vehicle revved menacingly behind us, its presence urging us forward. Caleb began reciting historical exorcism rites, Zoe readied herself to confront the spirit, and I documented the events with my camera, knowing that if we survived, the world needed to know. Mia turned the wheel, following the GPS command, and we braced for impact. Instead of a collision, there was a blinding flash of light. When our vision cleared, we were parked safely at the side of the road, the sun rising to chase away the shadows of the night. The GPS was dead, the screen cracked as if it had been struck. We returned home, but life couldn't go back to normal. The investigation into the phenomenon led us to more questions than answers. No one could explain the GPS's behavior or the phantom vehicle that seemed to have vanished into thin air. My footage was dismissed as a clever hoax, but we knew the truth. Our story became the essence of a new creepypasta, a tale of warning about the left turns you take and the spirits that linger at the crossroads of death. The whispers of Voyager have since quieted, but sometimes, when the night is still and the roads are empty, I swear I can hear it beckon me to turn left at my own risk. Story number 3. The road taken by none, the whispering path. It was the summer of 2003. And the urge to escape the mundane was like a persistent itch for me, Jackson, a freelance writer with a penchant for the macabre. My friends, Lily, a nurse with an uncanny intuition, Ethan, a stoic survivalist, and Harper, a tech-savvy programmer, were my companions on what was supposed to be an adventurous road trip through the lesser-known suburbs of the United States. I was behind the wheel when our journey spiraled into the unexplainable. Our GPS, a seemingly ordinary device we called Navigator, started to guide us down roads less traveled, its screen blinking with static as if resisting an unseen force. Lily, usually unfazed by the dark, gripped her seat tighter with each turn we took. The further we went, the more overgrown the paths became. Harper joked about Navigator getting us lost, but the humor died when Ethan pointed out the chilling pattern. Each road we traversed bore the memory of a traveler who had mysteriously vanished. With each whispering coordinate, Navigator nudged us deeper into the unknown, and it felt like we were trailing ghosts. Ethan's outdoors skills became invaluable as the roads grew wilder. Lily's whispers of intuition suggested we were being led by the lost souls themselves. The realization was a cold splash of terror. We were on a road that didn't want to let us go. With Harper's tech expertise, we attempted to trace back the origins of the GPS's strange behavior, only to find that our path was wiped clean from the map, as if Navigator was creating the route from some spectral blueprint. The further we went, the darker the histories we uncovered. Disappearances, unexplained phenomena, and even tales of devil worship tainted the roads we took. The air thickened with the scent of damp earth and the stifled fear of my friends as Navigator whispered tales of those who had taken this path before us, a hitchhiker who vanished into thin air, a family that left only shadows behind, a trucker who drove into nothingness. As the foliage encroached upon us like clawing hands, Lily swore she heard the lost ones whispering their warnings, their voices melding with Navigator's monotone. Ethan was silent, his eyes scanning for a path not marred by tragedy. Harper's fingers flew over her laptop, desperately seeking a digital escape from our eerie entrapment. We finally reached a clearing, an ominous silence enveloping us, the roads behind swallowed by the encroaching wilderness. Navigator spoke its final words, "End of the road." Harper's laptop emitted a sharp crackle before dying, its screen a mirror to Navigator's blank one. It was Lily's soft sobbing, Ethan's grim-set jaw, and the creeping realization of our own possible disappearance that filled the silence thereafter. I was walking around the clearing, a sense of déjà vu haunting my steps, as if I'd read our story before, in a creepypasta that warned readers of roads that led to nowhere and devices that whispered of the damned. It struck me then, the ghastly truth, we were living the very tale that would soon become digital folklore. It took days to find our way back to civilization, the GPS silent, its screen cracked, an enigma within its wires. The investigation that followed led down internet rabbit holes and into hushed conversations with locals, who spoke of the roads that took but never returned. Now, as I recount these memories, Navigator sits inert on my shelf, a relic of the horror we escaped. But sometimes, in the deep stillness of the night, I can hear it, a whisper, a static-laced murmur, beckoning me to take the road taken by none. And every time, I shiver, wondering if it's just a matter of time before it leads someone else to their unknown fate. Story number 4. The Dead-End Dilemma, Whispers at the Crossroads. I was never one to believe in the supernatural until a hot, dry summer of 2004, when my road trip with friends became a nightmarish plunge into the paranormal. My name is Connor, a documentary filmmaker by passion and profession, and what happened to us on the desolate roads of a forgotten American suburb was something I wish we could have captured on film, though perhaps it's best left unrecorded. We were an adventurous quartet, myself, Maya, a journalist known for her skeptical views, Alex, a history teacher with a love for unsolved mysteries, and Zoe, a spiritual medium whose talents were, until then, something I'd considered nothing more than clever parlor tricks. Our trusty GPS, dubbed GuideStar by the group, was our lifeline through the maze of asphalt. I was driving when GuideStar began acting up, leading us to one dead end after another. At first, we joked about its malfunction, but humor soon gave way to dread. With each dead end, Zoe grew increasingly agitated, whispering of the restless spirits that lingered there. Our first vision struck at twilight. The road ended abruptly at the edge of a field, and there, displayed before our eyes like a ghostly cinema, were the flickering images of a young couple arguing in their car, moments before a tragic crash. We could hear the echoes of their last words, the sound of twisting metal, and then, silence. Maya, ever the skeptic, rationalized it as a shared hallucination brought on by exhaustion and the power of suggestion. But as GuideStar lured us to yet another dead end, this time an old bridge, her theories faltered. We all saw him, a lonely fisherman whose demise came through a dark, watery embrace. Alex, with his encyclopedic knowledge, recognized the story, a local man who had gone missing years ago, presumed drowned. Each spirit seemed tethered to their final moments, replaying their demise in endless loops. Zoe's gift allowed us to communicate with these lost souls, and she became our medium in the truest sense. I was walking between realms, documenting our interactions with a shaky handy cam, while Zoe, with trembling voice, coaxed the spirits to recount their tales. The investigation that unfolded was one we conducted ourselves. Using local archives and the internet, we uncovered the grim histories of each dead end. It became our mission to help these spirits find peace, to break the cycle of their torment. Our resolve was tested at every turn, with spectral images that could freeze blood and unearthly cries that echoed long into the night. But it wasn't just the spirits that haunted us, it was the creeping realization that GuideStar was not just broken, it was possessed. The device knew things it couldn't possibly know, taking us to locations that didn't exist on any map, places forgotten by time but stained with memories of death. As we aided each spirit, the visions grew more intense, the deaths more gruesome. We witnessed the final breaths of a hitchhiker, the despairing plunge of a jilted lover, the last terrified moments of a child lost too soon. With each resolution, GuideStar would briefly clear, as if gasping for air, before plunging us into the next morbid encounter. It happened to me, too. The visions weren't just for Zoe anymore. They seeped into my dreams, into the very air we breathed. By the time we helped the last spirit, a woman who had been sacrificed in a devil-worshipping ritual, GuideStar flickered and died, its screen cracking with a sound like a final, desperate scream. We left the suburbs behind, but the memories of those dead ends never left us. The whispers followed me even after returning to the realm of the living, a reminder of the summer when my disbelief was shattered by the touch of the paranormal. It's a tale I sometimes share, but only when the lights are on and the roads outside are busy with the living. For in the silence and the dark, I fear that GuideStar might power on once more, its whispering coordinates beckoning me back to the crossroads of spirits and sorrow. Story number 5. Roundabout of the Lost, Echoes in the Rear View. I never could have imagined a simple gadget designed to lead the way would become my compass into the abyss. It was 2005, and I, Nathan, a curious and somewhat naive videographer, was eager to document the quaint towns on the outskirts of America with my childhood friends, Lily, a nurse with a kind heart, Oscar, an amateur paranormal investigator, and Tara, a budding psychologist. Our trip was full of laughter and the freedom of the open road until we reached the roundabout. It was supposed to be just another part of the journey, but our GPS, which we had nicknamed Pathfinder, had other plans. I was driving when it glitched, its screen flickering with static as it commanded in a robotic stutter, "Take the third exit," even though we had just taken it. We circled once, twice, then a third time, and with each pass, the landscape seemed to blur and change, the sky growing unnaturally dark. The roundabout became our purgatory, a loop from which there seemed to be no escape. That's when they began to appear, the passengers. It happened to me first. Glancing in the rearview mirror, I caught the reflection of a woman dressed in a gown from another era, her face pale and eyes filled with an eternity of sorrow. She whispered, "I need to go home." My heart froze. I could see her only through the mirror. The back seat was empty when I turned around. Lily, Oscar, and Tara saw them too. One by one, spectral figures materialized in the back seat, each sharing their tragic stories. There was the soldier who never returned from war, the young boy who chased a stray ball into the street, the elderly man who simply disappeared one day, all locals, their tales woven into the tapestry of urban legends that Oscar eagerly recounted. These ghosts were not malevolent, but their presence was heavy with regret and longing. They needed us, needed me to drive them to their final resting places, a task that felt impossible within the confines of the relentless roundabout. An investigation began each time a spirit appeared. We had to use clues from their stories to figure out where they needed to go. Tara used her psychology background to piece together their fragmented memories, while Lily's empathy allowed her to connect with them on a deeply personal level. Oscar, with his ghost hunting gear, tried to communicate further, and I documented every harrowing moment. The roundabout seemed to exist out of time and space, the exits leading to graveyards, old homesteads, and places heavy with echoes of the past. With each spirit we helped, a piece of the haunting puzzle fell into place, revealing a history of the land stained with untold stories. But it wasn't just the spirits that were trapped. We started to realize that Pathfinder was more than a malfunctioning device. It was a gatekeeper to the unseen, an anchor that kept us tethered to this loop of limbo. The whispers grew louder, and the air turned cold with each revelation. It became a ritual: uncover their stories, find their resting places, and set them free. The final spirit was the hardest to face, a young girl, no older than 10, who appeared in the seat next to me, her small hand placed over mine on the gear stick. "They forgot about me," she said, her voice a mere wisp of sound. Her story led us to an unmarked grave, overgrown and lost to time. It took all our collective strength to bring her peace. As the last spirit faded away, Pathfinder's screen cleared, and the roundabout released us from its grip. The sun broke through the clouds, casting light on the now familiar exits. We drove away in silence, each lost in thought. I never look at roundabouts the same way again. I still see them in my dreams sometimes, the ghostly passengers waiting for a ride. And though we left that suburb behind, the whispers linger, reminding me of the time I was driving on the road less traveled, the roundabout of the lost. Story number 6. The Recalculating Route, Whispers of the Vanished. I was driving down an old stretch of highway in 2006, the year I turned 28, when the nightmare began. My name is Adam, and back then, I fancied myself an amateur historian, drawn to the secrets of small-town America. Alongside me were Zoe, a fearless investigative journalist, Ethan, a tech whiz with a penchant for the paranormal, and Mia, a detective in training whose intuition was as sharp as her wit. We were on a mission to document the forgotten corners of the suburbs, but our trusty GPS, affectionately dubbed Voyager, seemed to have other ideas. It started when we missed a turn, and Voyager's voice chimed in with the dreaded recalculating. But instead of guiding us back to the main road, it led us down an overgrown path to an old, dilapidated farmhouse. It happened to Zoe first. As she stepped onto the porch, she whispered, "This is where the Caldwell family vanished in 1929. Without a trace." The air around us turned icy, and I could feel a charge, electric and ominous. Each recalculation brought us to a different scene, an abandoned mine where miners had been trapped and never recovered, a desolate field that was once a thriving community before the residents disappeared one night, leaving their belongings behind. Every location had one thing in common, a history of unexplained disappearances. The investigation took a turn when we realized that the recalculating moments were occurring at increasingly shorter intervals, and the places it led us to were chronologically inching closer to the present day. "It's like we're being shown a pattern," Mia said, her brow furrowed as she scribbled notes into her journal. We gathered clues from each site, piecing together police reports, diary entries, old newspaper clippings, anything that Zoe's relentless digging could unearth. Ethan hacked into archived satellite data, while Mia's interviews with the locals revealed chilling anecdotes that matched the historical records. The breakthrough came when I noticed a symbol etched into a tree at each site. It was subtle, easily missed, but unmistakably the same each time. "It's a sigil," Ethan realized. "A mark of something sinister." The final recalculation felt imminent, and we sensed that if we didn't break the cycle, one of us might be the next to disappear. The clues led us to an old church on the outskirts of a ghost town, its steeple casting a long shadow as evening approached. Inside, we found a hidden room, a shrine littered with symbols and artifacts that spoke of devil worship and attempts to touch the beyond. We were in the heart of the mystery, the GPS silent for the first time in hours. It was Mia who discovered the last piece of the puzzle, a diary belonging to a self-proclaimed medium who had orchestrated the vanishings, believing they would grant him immortality. The sigils were part of a larger ritual, and each recalculation was a countdown to the final disappearance that would complete the cycle. Zoe captured every harrowing detail on her camera, Ethan disrupted the electronic components of the ritual with his gear, and Mia dismantled the physical elements of the shrine. I remember standing in the middle of that church, Voyager finally declaring route completed. We had broken the cycle, preventing the final disappearance, which I feared would have been my own. I still get nervous whenever I hear the word recalculating from any GPS. I can't help but glance at my rearview mirror, half expecting to be led down another path of forgotten history. But I drove away from that suburb with a resolve to document the truth, to shed light on the darkness we had uncovered. And so, I tell this story in the hopes that it remains a piece of history and not a whisper in the rearview mirror of someone else's nightmare. Story number 7. The Zero Milestone, Echoes of the Forgotten Road. I was barely out of college, a 20-something with a penchant for thrill and stories, when I embarked on a road trip that I hoped would be the fodder for a breakout documentary. My name's Liam, and I was hell-bent on making a name for myself. With me was Eliza, a nurse with an eerie ability to sense emotions, Jackson, a wannabe magician and an old college buddy, and Rachel, a soft-spoken librarian who documented urban legends. It was the summer of 2007 when our fateful journey began, intending to trace the origins of America's most haunted spots. The trouble started with an old GPS I had found at a garage sale, which boasted an uncanny accuracy. We named it Navigator, and soon we'd find out that it was more than a navigational device, it was a compass to the supernatural. Navigator's screen flickered to life with a destination labeled Zero Milestone, a name that sent chills down our spines. It was an urban legend in a sleepy suburb, a point where all distances were said to be measured from but where some travelers measured their final moments in this world. I was driving when Navigator's monotone voice guided us onto roads less traveled, the landscapes growing wilder with each passing mile. Eliza shivered, whispering, "Something is waiting for us." She claimed she could feel the residue of countless emotions, thick as fog. The Zero Milestone turned out to be a decrepit marker stone in the heart of an abandoned town, overrun by nature's reclaiming touch. It felt like a gaping mouth to nowhere, an abyssal point on the map where GPS signals went to die. Jackson tried his hand at contacting the spirits with his amateur magic, while Rachel scoured her anthology of legends, finding eerie accounts of those who ventured here and never returned. That night, as the wind howled through broken windows and the moon cast sinister shadows, the true horror began. Figures appeared, ethereal and bound to the marker stone. They were the lingering spirits, and each had a tale more tragic than the last. I remember the sensation of cold dread as a spectral child tugged at my sleeve, her voice a mere whisper, begging for a ride home, a home that no longer existed. Eliza tended to a ghostly soldier who spoke of a war long forgotten, and Jackson was locked in a silent exchange with a phantom showman, a mirror image of what he could become. The investigation took a sinister turn when Rachel uncovered a tome that detailed the ritual of the Zero Milestone, one that promised a journey to the world beyond and back. But there was a price, a life for a life, a soul for a soul. I was walking around the marker stone when it hit me. We were part of the ritual, a summoning circle unwittingly completed by our presence. It happened to me, I whispered to my friends, my voice hoarse with fear. We need to undo this. To break the ritual, we had to bargain with the spirits, offering them closure instead of the souls they hungered for. Eliza used her empathic abilities to soothe the restless dead, Jackson performed illusions to entertain and distract, and Rachel, with words of power from her ancient tome, sealed the deal. As dawn approached, I found myself at the helm once more, Navigator silent in the passenger seat, the GPS screen blank as if it had never been on. We drove away from the Zero Milestone, the sun rising to banish the darkness of the night and the spirits along with it. The documentary was a hit, a blend of horror and history that haunted the dreams of those who watched it. But every so often, when I pass by a road marker, I can't help but wonder about the miles untraveled, and the spirits that watch from the milestones, waiting for their next unexpected visitor. And so, I tell this story, hoping to keep others from the paths that lead to the Zero Milestone, the road trip nightmare where the final destination might just be the other side. Story number 8. Echoes of the Highway, the Phantoms of Route 29. It's strange how the past can sometimes reach out, as if time folds in on itself, allowing the dead to whisper to the living. My name is Alex, and in the fall of 2008, I set out with friends to create a documentary on America's haunted highways. What we encountered was a chilling blend of past tragedies and present dangers, all through the guide of a possessed GPS system. Alongside me were Natalie, a history grad with an obsession for the macabre, Sean, a stoic paramedic who believed in logic over legend, and Mia, a tech whiz whose skills would prove both a blessing and a curse. Our destination was Route 29, a stretch of road that twisted through the suburbs and was notorious for unexplained disappearances and accidents. It was supposed to be a journey through history until our GPS, an outdated model Mia had tinkered with, became our gateway to horror. I was driving the old van when the first bulletin crackled through the speakers. The GPS screen glitched, replaced by the date 1952 and a newsman's voice recounting a family of 4 found deceased in their car, no cause ever determined. A chill went down our spines, but we chalked it up to a bizarre coincidence, perhaps a radio interference. But as we continued, each mile we covered brought another bulletin from the past, each a tragic tale bound to the very asphalt beneath our wheels. The road, it seemed, remembered its dead. The most harrowing was the story of a hitchhiker who vanished in '76, spoken in the hitchhiker's voice, a plea for help that was never heard. Sean, ever the skeptic, insisted there must be a logical explanation, but even he couldn't deny the fear that was slowly gripping us. Natalie began to piece together the patterns. Each bulletin played as we neared the exact spots of the tragedies, and if we didn't listen, if we tried to turn off the GPS or change our path, the electronics in our van would fail, leaving us stranded and vulnerable. Mia dove into her bag of tech, attempting to dismantle the GPS, but the machine was hot to the touch, searing her fingers as if protecting its dark purpose. It was during one of these bulletins, as the ghostly voice of a woman recounted her final moments before a deadly crash, that we understood our grim task. We had to listen, bear witness to these echoes of the highway, and acknowledge the pain etched into this cursed route. Only then did the phantoms of the past seem appeased, the van's lights flickering back to life, allowing us to inch forward. As the night drew on, we realized we weren't just creating a documentary, we were part of the highway's tapestry of sorrow, a living chapter in its ongoing saga. I was walking beside the van, I recall telling the camera, when a cold hand seemed to pass through me, a silent thank you from a spirit finally heard. The sun rose as we reached the end of Route 29, the GPS silent now, its screen blank as if it had never spoken a word. We left the haunted highway behind, but the stories we carried with us. In the end, our documentary didn't just recount the horrors of Route 29, it became a digital seance, a medium through which the forgotten could speak. We released it not as entertainment, but as a warning and a memorial to those lost along the way. Sometimes, late at night, I'll hear the faint crackle of a radio bulletin, a whisper from the past, and I'm reminded that some roads have memories, and some echoes never fade. Story number 9. The passenger's destination, shadows on the rear view. My name is Lucas, and if you told me before the summer of 2009 that a simple GPS could dredge up the darkest corners of a soul, I'd have laughed. But after what I experienced on those sun-bleached roads of the California suburbs, laughter is a currency I seldom trade in. It began as a road trip with my friends, Rachel, an aspiring psychologist, Tyler, a rookie cop with a hard shell, and Jenna, a freelance journalist who believed everyone's story deserved to be told. Our car was an old sedan with worn-out seats and a GPS that Jenna had found at a garage sale. She joked it looked like something out of a horror movie. If only we knew. I was driving out of Jenna's driveway when the GPS first came alive, its screen flickering before settling on a new route, one we hadn't programmed. Rachel was the last to join, and as she buckled in, the device recalibrated, leading us not to our intended campsite, but to an old, decrepit house I'd never noticed before. In that house, we discovered, was where Rachel had grown up, and where she witnessed something that haunted her dreams. A figure, silhouetted against the lightning of a stormy night, whom she could never quite forget. With each revelation, the air grew colder, and a presence seemed to settle among us, like a fifth passenger made of shadows and regret. Every new person who entered the car brought another reroute, another harrowing journey. Tyler's led us to a bridge where, as a child, He stood frozen, watching helplessly as a car plunged into the icy waters below. And Jenna? Hers took us to an abandoned newsroom where she once lost a colleague to the very story they were investigating. The GPS was unrelenting, a cruel director scripting our detours to places steeped in sorrow. I began to understand my role. I wasn't just a driver. I was a mediator between the past and present, tasked with guiding my friends through the catharsis of their unresolved histories. I was walking through the remnants of Tyler's Bridge. I'd narrate into Jenna's camera, which we kept rolling for the world to one day understand, and I could feel the chill of water never touched, the echo of a cry lost to the river. Our investigation into the GPS origin led us down a rabbit hole of paranormal phenomena. We learned of a reclusive engineer who'd become obsessed with the idea that places hold memories, and that certain objects could tap into these psychic residues. He had died, his work unfinished, or so it seemed. As I helped each friend confront their darkness, the hauntings grew less intense, the air less oppressive. The GPS would fall silent, its screen turning to static before displaying our original, mundane destination. But the story doesn't end there. For when I finally reached home and looked into the rearview mirror, the GPS flickered back to life one last time. The screen showed an address I knew all too well, the hospital where I was born, and where my mother passed away, a secret I never shared. In the silence of my car, I heard a whisper, a voice that seemed like a distant memory: turn left at your own risk. I never went to that hospital. Instead, I disposed of the GPS, burying it where no signal could escape. But the hauntings? They followed me in less tangible ways. And this story, my recollection of the events, serves as both a cautionary tale and an unresolved chapter of my own. Because in those suburbs, under the Californian sun, I learned that the most haunting destinations are not places, but the human heart's uncharted territories. And I pray, for those who find that cursed GPS next, that their roads are less troubled than ours. Story number 10. No signal ahead, the echoes of the lost highway. I'm Alex, and in the fall of 2010, my belief in the rational world was shattered. I was a grad student then, fascinated by the fringes of science, but nothing in my logical universe could explain what happened on those desolate roads on the outskirts of Nevada. Our group was a mix of thrill-seekers and skeptics: Mia, a nurse who could always be counted on for a calm head; Darren, a history teacher with a penchant for the unexplained; and Zoe, a software developer who always had one too many conspiracy theories. We set out in an old SUV, the kind with a built-in GPS that predated smartphones. The plan was to explore some old ghost towns, a perfect adventure before Halloween. I was driving when it first happened. I'd tell anyone who'd listen, even now when the memory sends shivers down my spine. The GPS lost signal, and the screen blinked no signal ahead. We thought it was a glitch. But as the signal faded, the world outside changed. The road led us straight into a scene from another era, a spectral town materialized from the mists of time, peopled by ghosts reenacting their final, tragic moments. We found ourselves in a loop, forced to watch a bank robbery gone wrong, a shootout with the townsfolk that ended in fire and death. "We need to solve this," Darren whispered, "or we're stuck here." It felt like one of his history lessons come to life, only this time, we were part of the story. Working together, we uncovered the hidden history of the town, revealing a tale of greed and betrayal. I remember walking through the spectral flames, feeling the heat that wasn't there, hearing the screams that had echoed a century ago. It happened to me, I'd insist, I was there. Each time we resolved a ghostly scenario, the GPS signal would return, and we'd be back on the road, the town disappearing as if it had never been. But then, the signal would drop out again, and another haunting would begin. Once, we were in a makeshift hospital tent during a forgotten epidemic, the air heavy with the despair of the dying. Mia, her nurse's instincts kicking in, guided us through, helping each spirit find peace. Zoe's tech savviness came through when we faced a phantom train derailment, deciphering Morse code that led to revelations of sabotage and a last message never sent. The loop continued, our own fears growing. I was walking among the dead, their whispers in my ears. I'd recount, each step a journey through their agony. The investigation into this phenomenon led us down a rabbit hole of urban legends and government cover-ups. We uncovered documents, old, classified papers about experiments in psychotronics, using places as anchors for emotional traumas, the GPS system somehow intertwined. We were part of an uncontrolled experiment, it seemed, subjects in a study of spectral phenomena and emotional resonance. Our final ordeal was personal. The GPS led us to a modern-day scene, a car accident, with victims eerily similar to us. It happened to me, I'd say, because in that twisted metal, I saw myself. To escape, we had to accept and understand the fragility of life, to confront our mortality. With shaking hands, we bandaged wounds, whispered comforts, and closed the eyes of our doppelgangers, granting them the peace they needed to move on. The GPS signal returned, solid and clear, guiding us home in silence. But we were changed, haunted by the knowledge that every no-signal zone on a map might hide a story, a loop, an echo waiting to be heard. The SUV sits in my driveway, unused. I prefer to walk, the sky open above me, the solid ground a reassurance against the ghosts of roads once traveled. And I keep telling our story, my story, because those echoes shouldn't be forgotten, because somewhere, on a lost highway, the signal might drop again, and someone else will find themselves walking in our footsteps.